In today's video, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson exposes Chuck Schumer's true intention behind leading the government shutdown as he drops a bombshell on what the real motive is. So stay tuned.
Why did Chuck Schumer change his tune, and why is he now saying exactly the opposite of what he said 6 months ago? A picture's worth 10,000 words, okay? This is a copy of the Washington Examiner. Zoom in on that, all right? If you can't see this at home, I just had this on my desk on a big stack, and I found it. This is published March of 2025, March 26 exactly. It's a picture of Chuck Schumer looking very upset, very angry, walking out with a box, and all the House Democrats depicted their character, saying that he's an enemy of democracy. Why is he an enemy of democracy? Because the far left base in the Democrat Party has turned on Chuck Schumer because he did the responsible thing, get the lights on. Why? Because they want him to show a fight against President Trump. So Schumer doesn't want to be in this situation again. So he said, my gosh, he got his staff together and he got the far left wing of the party. He said, what do you want? What do you want me to fight on? So they created a red herring. A red herring is a distraction. They decided that they would pick a fight on health care. Well, let me look right into the camera and tell you very clearly. Republicans are the ones concerned about health care. Republicans are the party working around the clock every day to fix health care. This is not talking points for us. We've done it. A big part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, was to fix health care. Health care is broken in America. It's too expensive. The quality of care needs to rise. We need more access for more people, and we have lots of ideas to do that. But that issue is for debate in the next 3 months. It always was. We have members working on that. The tax credit, the subsidy you've heard about that expires December 31st, there's a lot of thoughtful debate and discussion that has already been going on about that and will go on about that. But that's a December 31 issue. So Chuck Schumer is scrambling. He has to have an issue. None of their policies are very popular, so they decided to lob onto health care, and he decided to claim to all of you that is the issue with government funding. It is not. Those are two totally separate things. The clean continuing resolution would simply keep the lights on so that the members in the House and Senate can have those debates on health care. We were always planning, and we have lots of ideas on the table on how to fix it, but we don't yet have consensus on it because it's very complicated. We have time to do it. The month of October is a critically important time for us to get the House and Senate working on that very issue. But they're delaying it because they needed a red herring. So in his desperation, we get to fact number 3. In his desperation, they decided to create the red herring. They decided to claim that this is all about health care, which the September funding issue never was. That's a December policy issue. He tried to create it as a September funding issue.
And so he's setting the record straight right now and cutting through the confusion the Democratic Party is deliberately trying to create. Mike Johnson laid it all out, how Chuck Schumer ended up in this position. I mean, here's the truth. Schumer's own far left base, they branded him a traitor months ago. He's holding up the magazine from earlier in the year, the one that mocked him for working with Trump to keep the government open. And that's where the progressive wing of his party, they humiliated him, believing that he caved and calling him weak for not standing up to Trump. And now it's happening again where already 2 Democrats, one from Pennsylvania, one from Nevada, along with one independent from Maine, they've already sided with the Republicans in choosing to keep the government open. And those defections are proof that Schumer is losing influence inside of his own party. This is someone who is willing to hold the American people hostage politically, all while pretending this is some noble fight about health care. But it's not. It's not even close. And that's why it matters that someone like the Speaker of the House is stepping up and breaking it all down for people to understand, taking control of the narrative, walking people through the facts, and explaining exactly what's at stake here. The timeline and the simple reality is this: choosing to keep the government open up until November 21st. That's what Republicans are asking for, to extend operations, keep things moving, and work on a resolution, not political theater. But let's jump to this clip from CNN where, believe it or not, the host applies pressure by asking the very question, why shut the government down now when back in March, you work together to keep it open.
So obviously we were here 6 months ago, and you voted to keep the government open back then, and you seemed to be against at the time of using a shutdown as a tactical move. I want to play some of what you said in March of this year, the last time the issue was up for debate, and then get your reaction.
Sure. I have said many times there are no winners in a government shutdown. As bad as passing the CR is, as I said, allowing Donald Trump to take even much more power via a government shutdown is a far worse option. Therefore, I will vote to keep the government open.
Now, obviously, back then there was a shorter timeline at hand, but isn't the outcome the same? I mean, President Trump is threatening a host of federal firings. He's already frozen billions in funding to New York, your state, and other blue states.
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot of difference between now and then. Back then, we wanted to see what they would do, and we've seen how horrible they are. The horrible health care cuts that they made were made in June in their so-called big, beautiful bill.
Let's just give old Chuck here the benefit of the doubt. Let's just assume, just for a moment, that he really does care about Americans and getting them health care. That is actually coming from a good place. Then he needs to explain this. How does shutting down the government actually move talks forward? It doesn't. All it does is freeze negotiations and leave thousands of federal workers without a paycheck. TSA workers, air traffic controllers, Border Patrol agents, active duty service members. Those are just to name a few who are going without a paycheck. And these are the same people they love to thank in their speeches. So if the goal is to improve healthcare, how does punishing American workers and stopping the government from functioning accomplish that? And that's the problem right now, that this isn't really strategy. It's desperation. Because the truth is, Schumer isn't fighting for policy. He's fighting for survival right now. He's losing power inside of his own party right now. And the pressure coming from the far left, especially people like AOC, who he's afraid he'll lose his job to in next year's primary.
We were just hearing from Senator Roger Marshall, and in speaking to Brianna, he was suggesting that for Democrats, this was all political. And we've heard the argument before that this is because Chuck Schumer is afraid of getting primaried. I wonder, after the criticism that he specifically received for extending funding back in March, does this come down for Democrats to showing their base that they're willing to put up a fight?
Yes, it does. And look, you got to get into the weeds to really unravel what this is all about. And I think that the risk that the Republicans face is one of the public certainly know that a Republican is in the White House and Republicans control the House and the Senate. And therefore, I think there's going to be this temptation to say, well, they can't work it out. It's their fault. They're in charge, not taking into consideration that this is a 60-vote issue, and consequently Republicans alone can't get it done. The side that's demanding something normally suffers. That would be the Democrats in this case. But I think the president runs the risk of overplaying his hand. If Russell Vought starts to fire people, and I'll mention something else that I think is an embarrassment. In the Bush 41 administration, I served in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I was responsible for a region of 5 states plus Washington, D.C., and all federal housing therein. 2,000 employees, only 2 of us were political appointees, myself and one other person. So today, Boris, after reading the stories, I went onto that HUD website, which I'm familiar with, and to see the radical left has shut down HUD is such an embarrassment, because I think of the 2,000 employees for whom I was responsible. They're just people showing up and doing a job. They're not caught up in any of this partisan crossfire. And for their public housing work to be subject to, you know, the radical left or the right or whatever, it's just so demeaning. It's so demeaning.
Listen, Chuck is pandering to the loudest, most radical wing in his own party. And the fatal flaw in today's Democratic Party is that they've tied themselves to their extremists. But here's the thing about catering to extremists. It will always backfire. It always does. Even if he's thinking we'll shut down the government and we'll fire up the base, maybe he will. But the only people who he'll actually motivate are the ones who want to see him replaced. Those far left radical voters aren't showing up for Chuck Schumer. They're showing up for the AOCs, for the Zoran Mamdanis who want to push socialism. And so even if this works short term, it'll just destroy him in the long term. If Democrats had any strategy left, they'd be doing the opposite right now. They'd be reaching towards the middle, not running from it, showing Americans that they can work with the Trump administration and keep the government open and get something done, and that they're not as deranged as what it looks like due to them pandering to the far radical left. But guys, let me know your comments. Go ahead and drop them down below. You know, I appreciate when you guys take the time to chime in. And make sure you stick around for the next video, as Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson continues to condone the attacks on federal agents and spews more lies. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next time.